we're all here to build something in and around blockchain, which we all probably have heard something about it. Some people call things you can do with the technology crypto, some people call it memes, some people call it finance, some people call it many, many different things. What I want to do with you today is take one step back and just look at where does it come from, what does it do, what's the problem that it initially set out to solve, which actually makes us go back in time to 2007. And yes, that is before the financial crisis and just around that time. So, let's see. The initial thing that actually happened in and around 2007 was that you could already see in and around the financial markets that a lot of people were taking a lot of risks. If you heard about just financial bubbles, and that's a topic then from 2020 roughly, we've all heard and saw in the news all over again. So it's quite of an interesting time actually to go back and see what did people think then, what was the solution they came up with, which, little spoiler, is actually Bitcoin. But Bitcoin isn't just a solution that solves a financial problem. The underlying actually solves a technological problem that's been way, way, way older, that we can go back thousands of years. And if you imagine just how a bunch of generals would just go and be at so you can even use Switzerland, right? Like we're in a small little town and there's a lot of mountains outside. Well, if you want to attack the town in the middle and you have mountains on each side, well, imagine if that town actually has a lot of fierce warriors. So what you need to do is you have to attack at the same time. So each general is in one of the hills, but all of a sudden it gets cloudy, so you can't even see each other anymore. So the idea was that you just raise your hand and then you're going to attack. But if you don't see each other, then how do you know that you're going to attack at the same time? And that's a problem that's basically as old as time. And that's one thing that you also have in the digital world. Like if you want to meet up with a friend, right, and you haven't agreed on a time, maybe you have a group of friends, you're like 6, 7, 8 people, how do you agree on just meeting at the same time? Well, you may do WhatsApp polls, you may send calendars around, you may just try different things. And with friends, it's quite cool. You probably don't have a trader in there that's going to be like, hey, yeah, I'll show up like an hour early or I'll show up late. If you're talking about generals and you want to fight a battle, then if you have a trader in there and everyone doesn't attack at the same time, you're all dead. So that's the problem that people wanted to solve like 3,000 years ago. And digitally, we haven't been able to solve that. The digital way of doing that is, say you have different banks and those banks want to transfer balances, then there's another bank that makes sure that all those balances are properly transferred. That's called settlement. The same happens for stocks. So funnily, if you buy a stock and it shows in your brokerage app, it takes on average 2 to 3 days for you to actually own the stock. Because there's something called settlement going on where the banks just discuss, okay, who actually now owns that stock? Has it moved in between? And that is literally a problem that Bitcoin then solved on the technical level. The interesting part on how it actually did it, we may see a graphic in a bit on it. The idea is that you need to find the same point in time and the same time. So at the same point in time, you need to agree on the same value, right? So if you want to attack the small town in the middle from all of the different hills at the same time, because only then can you win the battle, you need to be sure that one, each of the generals knows the same time and that they agree on that same time and that they have received it. So there's multiple things to take care of. One, how can I be sure that everyone received it? 2, how can I be sure if they received it, they received the right time? 3, how can I be sure that they are sure that it's the right time so they actually have the confidence to go and attack? And in 2007, the Bitcoin white paper laid out a mechanism that they called proof of work that actually solved this. The way they did it is you're just going to solve a computation and whoever solves that computation first is going to put in the time. So say we do a little quick math in our head. What is 1 plus 1? First person shouting 2 actually sets the time. So I said 2 first, so I now get to dictate 10 a.m. to all of you tomorrow to attack, right? And then we know, okay, we're going to attack tomorrow, and because you can prove and see that 1 plus 1 equals 2, you know that I'm right. And then there is a little more going on the technical side, but that means we can now all coordinate. We don't have to trust each other. You don't have to trust me. You trusted the mechanism that 1 plus 1 equals 2. And when you go into your hacks, that's a property that I think is highly, highly valuable. We just heard moonshot ideas and going to the moon. Well, that's mostly engineering, technology, and also coordination. But what if nations had to work together with each other and share data? How can you know that the data is accurate? Well, one thing you may do is you may just prove it and use those algorithms to then decide. But there's a lot of other things happening with that blockchain at the bottom, as the bottom layer, where that coordination is now possible that wasn't possible before. So one thing we can now do is, well, when you trade stocks and it takes 2 days for you to actually own the stock, we can now do this instantly because we now have a way to just align on one value, which means this could be just you owning a stock. This could be you getting a reward. This could be you owning some cryptocurrency. This could be anything that you can imagine, where a blockchain is just a record of history along a time axis. So if you break it down, that's what I meant by going back a few steps, that is what blockchain fundamentally is as a technology, and then the only thing that matters is what you start doing with it. So trading is one, meme coins and cryptocurrency is another one. Another cool thing is lending money. So because the blockchain is so great as a ledger, you can go and exchange funds. You can exchange currencies, but that means with currency, whenever there's currency, there's also people that want more of it, that want a different one, and you can facilitate that exchange without needing to do paperwork. I don't need to go to a bank and say, okay, can you please just lend me money? Here's a lot of collateral. I just need this other currency. Can you please go and do this? And by the way, this is some of the use cases that we have right here, and we'll come back to the previous slides to quickly run through them. But we actually do have lending now where you don't have to sign paperwork. Like, we're in Switzerland. We all know paperwork. We all know banks. St. Gallen has banks. Zurich is an hour away, has a lot of banks. We know the exchanges. We probably heard of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin itself, the only thing it does is it does transactions. It only does accounting of how much money do you have you spent it, if you spent it, did you not spend it twice? Because that's one coordination problem, right? If you have a bug in your code and I can send money twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, I've just created money that I didn't have before. That shouldn't really happen. So that's part of what Bitcoin solved technically. And there's a few other ways of things you can do on a blockchain where you can write code and verify those programs, or you can do asset management. But the one thing that I really want everyone to understand is that we had the problem with the generals needing to coordinate on a time, and you see that they all have different times, but which one did we pick? And what the Bitcoin solved is that we now have a coordinated time, and this is just a mechanism. Bitcoin here in this sense just literally stands for blockchain technology. It doesn't really stand for the actual currency or the asset or however you want to call it. And that's, I'll send the slides over, but that's just a little more background for those who want to dive into it. So the one thing we do get is we can now have computers coordinate, that we talked about a little bit. So going back to the banking model, if you have one bank, that one bank already knows your accounts, that's fine, they have their IT. Multiple banks, it's harder. So Bitcoin and blockchains itself give us this property that most people call code is law, because the code you write will actually execute, and Ethereum went a little further and said, anything, any code that you want to run, all of those rules, we will be the guarantor that that code actually runs. So going back to our problem here, how do you know that the code actually runs? Like, we've seen Windows and computers just now not work the way that we want it to work. How can we be sure that it actually does the way we told it to work? And Ethereum has solved that. But what are state transitions? Well, state transition just means you go from one state to the other state to the next state. So in the hackathon, what you're going to do is you're going to go from having no idea to having a few mentors that are here to having an understanding, and in the end producing an idea and submitting on Sunday morning, and then pitching and hopefully winning, right? But why do you do that with the blockchain? Well, we can now do anything without trusting another person. And that could just mean sending funds, but that can also be bigger, right? So I inspire you to take some of the use cases we've already seen and think bigger. There's a few use cases on base that are already being built that are going way beyond. So do you actually trust ChatGPT to send money? By quick show of hands, who would let ChatGPT manage over $100,000 of their personal money? Okay, if we have one person, we have one really, really highly risky person, or that just trusts ChatGPT, like one of the two. You probably have a way better experience with ChatGPT than everyone else in the room. Actually, what Banker is doing is it's managing millions of dollars. So the really, really ambitious people would actually agree with you. They're already managing millions of dollars. How do they do that? They've built systems around managing those wallets. How can they manage that money without having to build all of the infrastructure banks have built? They use the properties that they get from a blockchain, the coins that are already on there, the interactions that they can get. They can lend money. They can bet on something, which Axel's going to show you in just a bit. And then they literally just have AI where you can say, oh, I need a loan against my Bitcoin to get 6,000 Swiss francs. Here's $10,000 in worth of Bitcoin. Just give me the money, easy lending. That's now possible. You just write one little message to this AI. Well, if you want to do that in Zurich, you have to go through a lot of paperwork and relationships to get to a bank that actually gets you that money against a Bitcoin loan. That's now possible in just one text message. So there's one Telegram group also for technical support. We do have the Discord as well. That's yet another QR code. I'll send over the slides as well, so you have them. There's a little GPT, so like a little ChatGPT chat, which I'll send the slides, but if you want to take a picture, feel free to do so, that you can ask questions. And that is already trained on what Axel is going to present in terms of what we're specifically building in this hackathon. But I urge you to just think a lot more about what is this technology actually, and what can you do with it. Don't just follow the ideas in the past that everyone is doing. We had one person in the room say they would trust AI to manage money, but we're already seeing AI manage millions and millions of dollars. So we can all be a little more ambitious. Thank you.